The biggest strength of a director is to know when to not control, when to give up control. Like it's as much about controlling as it is about not controlling. But Hollywood has this ability to completely like arrest you in this psychosis of delusions, and people who are so good at just barreling through will live an entire existence of falseness because they are able to drive through. And some of us should be grateful that we fall, because only when you fall you can go, oh shit, I don't even want to be that.
Hey everyone, this is your host Yoshino. Welcome to Artists Decoded. I'm not sure if I really need to introduce Saman because he's been on the podcast so much, but it's been a while, so I'll make a quick introduction for our new listeners. Saman Kesh is a good friend of mine. He's also a director and filmmaker. You might know him from his iconic music videos for Ed Sheeran, Basement Jaxx, Placebo, Kygo, and his recent-ish music video for Makeup and Vanity Set, where he co-directed it with Artists Decoded's very own Justin Dasher-Hopkins. Saman's also well known for his commercials. Recently, he's done some killer commercials for Toyota, Uber, and Mario Kart on Google Play. But most importantly, Saman is a fantastic human being. I've personally had the joy of watching him grow over the lifespan of this podcast. And I first met him back in 2016 on episode 50. And, you know, sometimes you just meet some kindred spirits along the way, and you can't really force that. But Saman is a very dear friend of mine now. We've had a lot of good times together, and we've also had some frustrating moments with each other, but all these moments have brought us closer together, and I can genuinely say that Saman is like a brother to me in a lot of ways. So I'm really excited for you all to listen to this podcast. Like I said, Saman is a great and very dear friend of mine, an incredibly talented mind and director. So before we begin, please go to our iTunes page and leave us a review. Also, Spotify has a rating system now, so if you can go on there and click that 5-star review, I would greatly appreciate it. So get ready to step into the brilliant mind of Saman Kesh. I hope you enjoy this episode. Yeah, we'll just riff over that. No, I mean, before we started recording, Saman and I were talking about the vitality of the desert, and now that I have that time in the desert, and also this experience in the forest, being able to channel that sort of energy. I don't know. I think it's more so about being able to be isolated from the outside world and really be in your thoughts and be self-reflective, and having a medium for that. And for now, I mean, right now my main medium's writing, so. Yeah, no,
I think it is. I think there's a vastness. It's weird. The same reason that I like doing psychedelics in the desert is probably the same. There's some kind of connective tissue with writing. There's a sort of safety. There's this duality where viscerally it feels kind of not superly overly stimulating, but at the same time, if you look for it, it's very stimulating, and you need both of those. I think when you're writing, you need this sort of calm and you need this busy, but also, like where I was staying, it was very open. I wasn't surrounded by mountains right here. I was surrounded by mountains out there. So like I just saw, and I think where I was slightly inclined. So just you saw a little bit more down on the earth, but it was so far in the distance that you've never seen looking down and that far, because the air was so clear. So I'm just like, what am I looking at? It looks like I'm like the world is falling into a river, but it just was because I was like this, and this is what I was seeing right here. But it was so amazing. I did psychedelics even with Isaac a couple times, and I think like writing was the same experience for me. It was just clean. It was clean, where in the forest, which I also like doing work in, like the Pacific Northwest and Vancouver and stuff like that. There's a kind of a nest quality, but it's still a little bit more wet and busy. It's not that I can't write. It's just the desert has a very unique clarity that I have found.
That makes sense.
When the mind needs to be like this, it just feels a little bit more, you can't
grounding in a sense.
Yeah, it's sort of just like there is a little bit of a like it is what it is, and it doesn't have this extra element to it. But yes, of course, it's also the getting away from the city and getting away from the energy of people always trying to hustle and bustle.
Yeah. But you have to deal with that quite a lot, right? I mean, doing commercials and everything, you have to deal with a lot of politics and bureaucracy, and so being able to get away and live in the desert. Because how long did you live in the desert during the pandemic?
I was there 3 months. 3 months with like a 1 week break in Sacramento, and then
that's a good amount of time.
Yeah, it was a lot of time. I was losing. It's definitely the maximum. I think because of COVID too, everybody's desire to hang out was very low. And I think people wanted to, but they secretly kind of liked, I think, being cooped up a little bit at that time. It was only 2-3 months in. But people were already feeling like the mental health stuff. And I definitely felt it, but I was like enjoying it. The part that got really hard was humans are just not designed to be alone for that long. Like they really just aren't. Like we're not just do it ourselves people. Like we lived in communities, we grew up in communities. I don't care how antisocial you are. Like you need other humans. You just do. It's just you just do. I don't care how spectrumy you are or introverted you are. You just do. And I think that was my boy. That was the moment where I said, if you ever want to test your patience being alone, 3 months in the desert, go. With no one else.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't out there for. I mean, that whole time that I was out there, it wasn't alone. So, yeah, I don't necessarily have that experience, but it was isolated in a different way. I mean,
in a different way, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have any friends out there, really. Actually, I only knew one person that our mutual friend Eric introduced me to, and but I only saw him maybe like once, so it was isolated in that respect. But I did learn that something that I've been thinking about a lot is the definite chief aim. Do you know this concept by Napoleon Hill?
Mm-mm.
So I had my friend Mitch Horowitz on the podcast, and he wrote this book that relays off that idea of the definite chief aim, and it's essentially writing down specifically what you want out of life. That can be from any sort of vantage point. For me, I think of it in terms of mind, body, and spirit, and being able to connect the three, So what's going to make me feel good physically and emotionally and mentally, but also in terms of like career, what sort of career trajectory, where do I want to go in? And I realize that writing is kind of like my version of painting in a sense, to where like I've sat down and I've painted before, but it's so fucking hard for me to paint because I don't know, just writing just made the most sense. And it makes the most sense because I have friends like you that are directors, and once I get my chops up, I can send my projects to my friends.
Go making some Yoshino movies.
yeah. So I don't know, it makes sense. But anyways, shit, man, we haven't talked. You haven't been in the podcast for at least a couple of years.
It's been a couple of years, yeah. I mean, there was a whole year of grief and hiatus on many things personal. I mean, I think last year was a year of, I mean, I don't know. How should we do this? Should I just like catch up from, I guess, like, because I guess pandemic year, we didn't really see each other too much. I think maybe we saw each other like once or twice maybe, but like definitely last year we didn't see each other at all.
Yeah. I mean, during the pandemic, I visited you out in the desert.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So we did see each other a couple times. You did visit
Yeah.
me out of the desert. I know we hung out once somewhere with Justin.
Wait,
After
last
that.
year I saw you with Opie the
At
dog.
beginning of the year. So over a year ago.
Yeah, it's been a year since I've seen you.
January, I remember, because that house I only had till the end of January. So that was January. That was like 2 weeks after Jean died. Or like
Yeah.
3 weeks after Jean died. Yeah, I remember that. It was the first time I witnessed you cry.
Really?
Yeah, it was amazing. I was like, whoa. Very, very Yoshino cry too. Just
What, a single tear just coming down.
I'll narrate what I'm doing. Basically, no facial reaction, just a tear. Very art directed down his face.
That's not true.
It's very true. But then you didn't wipe it artfully. You just went.
I just smudged my face.
That's terrible, man. That's terrible. But it was powerful, because when you know a person and you know they're hurting for you or with you or whatever, it's a powerful experience. Like I don't know where this whole guys don't cry bullshit. Like, I don't know. I'm like, I think guys are designed to cry, and I think the reason you get all this rage is because they don't, but it's like,
I agree.
the most right moments I feel in my life are when like dudes are crying together. It's just kind of amazing. Yeah.
I embrace the crying, man. I mean, I think there's this duality within me that, there's this very stoic, like genetically embedded Japanese sort of Ronin samurai
Control
side.
yourself.
Yeah.
Perfection.
But I enjoy a good cry, man. I like watching movies and crying and
listening to sad, like Sia Rose, and going, oh, it's definitely, it was a magical experience. But anyways, so after that, I just that was like hell for a while. I ran away to the cabin in Vancouver. I think you remember that. I'm sure I posted some stuff. And then I stayed with my buddy Charles Melton, who's an actor from Riverdale, really good friend of mine, and we're working on some projects. And at the time, I just wanted to stay with somebody. I wasn't ready to come back to the States, so I stayed in Vancouver with him for like a month. Like, got into shape, did a lot of exercise, like got into an intermittent fasting regimen, and like lost like, I don't know, probably 35, 40 pounds, actually 40 pounds.
Wow, that's crazy.
Not in that 1 month, but like within less than 2 months. It was pretty quick.
Yeah.
My body is able to like do that really fast. But it was, and I'm still maintained it, but it's definitely one of those things where I saw how much grief just weighed on me, literally, pun intended. And it's always there. It's still there. But after that, like, I just came back to when I came back to the US, I just suddenly started working, like, booking commercials, and I just nonstop. I've never been so busy in my life. And it was tough. It was tough because eventually I ran out of times to have grief for myself, and I would just freak out in like the middle of a shoot day and just not know what's going on. But it was just like that, you were overdrafted, and you basically, your permission to ignore grief was overdrafted, and then you lose your mind basically. So a lot of that was happening. And then I think it slowed down a little bit in summer. I shot like maybe 35, 40 shoot days of commercials, which if anybody knows commercials, that's like a lot. Like, it was, I made more money then, I think, than I made in like probably like 5-6 years in just that 3-month period. Yeah. And then
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I was going to say, is that, was that the Uber commercial? And then was that
Uber, Taco Bell, Chewy, Lowe's? It was a bunch of brands. Yeah. The Uber one was the like one that I'm proud of and like I share, but then there are jobs you take just, for the dough. Cause I'm working on a house. I'm building a house that Jean and I designed together. So I just wanted to keep my goal for the year. I removed and stripped away career focused thinking, and in like the traditional sense of what I was doing, and just said, I deserve this entire year to just be healthy and like emotionally, physically, just the general term of health. And then, keep my house going, because the house is my grounding and representation of life on this planet. And it's my temple. And not only to honor Jean, we have a Jean tree that we're planting, but also to honor myself and the existence I have here, even though she's not on this plane anymore. So that was my goal. And so, I just destroyed and shot too much. And then I came back around July, August. Nicole was with me. She left back to London middle of July. And then I had this crazy long time alone. and then the grief caught up to me big time, but it was like twisted and morphed. And that's what happens when grief disappears for a little bit. It's not disappeared. It's like kind of hanging out, but like when it comes back, it's like upgraded. It's like a boss battle in a game, you know? And it's like, but what it's upgraded is it's not more. It's also confusing. It's got like an invisibility cloak. It's disguised as your own depression, or it'll take your own insecurities, jealousies, and then merge with it. And then you have no fucking clue. And sometimes it'll be so buried in this one thing that you think it's all that, but then it's also grief's here. So it's not a monster if you can become friends with it. It's only a monster the more you ignore it. You know?
Oh, I agree.
And
yeah.
I think it's just like a bad trip. You just, you go, oh, I don't do shrooms. It made me super feel like shit. I'm like, no, that's your own brain, bro. You know, maybe you picked the wrong time to do it, but it's definitely all you. Sorry.
Yeah.
So it's definitely one of those things where an external thing happened, but like the grief is, you know, the more you love, the more you grieve, it means the more you loved. That's what it is. And that's just the reality. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't take it away. You can't add to it. You just deal with it, live it. So after that, I didn't work for maybe a month, and then I got busy again and worked like 4 or 5 jobs, did a really cool Toyota job that I'm very proud of. First time shooting, in Europe. We shot in Slovenia. It was a British job. Came out great. Did a couple money jobs after that. And then this year already, have shot maybe 20 plus commercial days. And, definitely this year is the start of getting back to narratives and saying no a lot more to commercials, which I did last year. I said no a lot, but there was just so much work, and I wanted to keep the momentum going because it just the jobs kept getting bigger. But this year I can, especially with like the Daniels film coming out and just all my peers, moving along. I just am like, I think, those are my teammates. Those are my squad members. And I'm in that same squad, and I still have that same passion. I just think I've hit sort of these last 5 years in general, even before Jean passed, was a time where my definition of what I do, or at least why I do what I do, was kind of constantly in limbo. And it's hard if you don't really know why, and you don't have that blind faith of, I don't know why, but I want to do this. If you don't have that, which I didn't, you just sort of, you don't want to work as hard, or you don't want to put your love out there because you just don't know if it's going to hurt you and if it's the right thing to die on, the right sword to die on.
Yeah.
So now I'm in this plane of existence where everything's a little bit more functional, but not so not so driven by success. It's more like just steps to building a home. That's how I'm considering it. Like a first movie, I don't look at like, it's my opus, this is my it needs to blow up. I'm like, no, I can make a movie where nobody watches it and it'll still be what I need to make to continue my journey as a filmmaker. And I think that is very freeing. And my partner and I, who have been together for probably like 9 months, maybe a little more. Actually, I can't do the math. Maybe actually almost a year probably. But she's my producer as well. And, we're both making kind of the jump slowly into narrative and wanting to make that first project together. So that's been very helpful. She's helped me kind of just re-examine like what it is I've wanted to make, and, not what I wanted to make, I guess why I do what I do.
Why? Okay. So then, I was going to say is, it seems like the conversation is getting steered and alluding to the why of it all. And so what would you say is that why? Why do you do the things that you do?
I think it's still a work in progress, to be honest. So the answer I give today is sort of the like beta version, but I think what I feel, and therefore I'm thinking about, is I strongly believe that my artistic needs and my energetic, my extroversion needs, my needs to communicate, are actually much more complicated than I thought. I thought that I want to communicate only through cinema, and then everything else is just whatever. I didn't respect the need for friends and the need to be an artist outside of making art. Like and that doesn't mean going to museums and shit like that. I don't fucking even like going to museums. I never will. But what I mean by that is just it's the understanding of like art never stops. It doesn't, work stops, but art never stops when you're an artist. And even just how I communicate to you on this podcast, even how I communicate at my game nights with my friends, it's like you play these cool question games like We're Not Really Strangers, right? And that's art. That's just like human art. It's psychological art. It's still like the creation and us sort of dancing with the things that make us us, that will always keep updating until the end of humans, right? So I think like what I'm realizing is there is multiple elements to my satisfaction as an artist, and that film just happens to be not one of the mediums. It is my medium. Filmmaking is my medium, but it's just one of the elements that I need to sustain my creative equilibrium. And I think I put too much emphasis on that being the only way. And when you're not fortunate, like even the Daniels, you look at them, their last movie was 2016. This new movie's 2022. It's like they were dedicated to that movie for so long, and they maybe made some commercials and stuff here and there. But it's like they're a great example of people who they don't have any other output, and so they do. They probably have plenty of other output that we don't see, and that's how a lot of, I think, artists and filmmakers who aren't in full control of when they can make something. That's the only way to survive.
I think that's some really good and powerful insights. Yeah, because I think like I was having a conversation with my friends about the difference between projects and dreams. So it's like a project could be something that you really care about, but I think sometimes we get confused with the project, and in this case it's like a feature film, right? So this project being like the end all be all, like I need to create this film because that is my dream. But actually the dream is much bigger than that. It's like, what can you contribute? Like, what is your contribution to society, right? Maybe on a bigger scale, it's creating things that are relatable, creating things that talk about the human experience. And something that I learned from you a long time ago is the power of commercialized projects and how you can utilize that to tell stories that are relatable to people, And I think you do a really good job with that. And I think you do it in a very Saman way. Like I love watching a lot of your commercials and stuff because you have a very like specific voice, and it shines through in every project that you create. And I feel like a lot of people strive for that, but can't necessarily find that. And I think that goes back to just being completely brutally honest with yourself.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think like something I would say that like my whole thing is very much that. I think for me, it was just like make movies, and yes, here are the movies I need to make. Yes, this is my first movie. And I gave up the like, this is my first movie probably 3 years back, and I was like, whatever just fucking crosses the finish line, that's my first movie. But it's even bigger than that, and the bigger, I was like, okay, it's just basically to get to like a big enough podium that I feel satisfied that I'm able to speak at least to an audience or the audience or whatever we want to label it as, that to the things that I want to say. But what I think I've learned recently is that that larger statement is, I don't know, there's like a humility that I have gained in just hanging out with friends and just enjoying video games again, and like, choosing what movies I care to watch, even if it's new movies that everyone's watching. And I go, I don't feel like watching this. Like, if I want to challenge myself, great. But if I want to be comfortable, I don't want to watch a new movie. I'd rather watch an old movie, one I've seen, maybe one I haven't seen, a Criterion movie, whatever, some Japanese new wave. But like, I think part of making a film, I think, is actually like feeling joy. So I think like having the faith in a project and being okay to fail is sort of something very freeing to me, because like once you give up ego or the worry about like, I want to be famous now, or I want to make a movie that's great and it has to be right now. It's like, I'm cool if my movie's never great or great after I die or whatever. Like, I think like that's very freeing, and it does remove so many like worries of trying to relate. And you're right, like what I do is commercialized in the sense of exactly you're not making the art that you want to see per se. You're making the art hopefully you want to see, but on top of that, it's this exchange with audience and a broader demographic, because a lot of artists do that too. They make what they want, but there's still a discussion. But it's a little bit more. It's the art scene. It's supposed to be sort of that other side of the brain or the opposite side of the brain, and it's supposed to be in a discussion, and it doesn't have to make sense, and it can offend. When you make commercialized content, you can offend, but at the same time, there's this like satisfaction that has to kind of exist. And I think not all films, some filmmakers can get away with it and just punish you, like like Killing of the Sacred Deer is a great example of just an absolute punishing movie. Yeah. But I think like a lot of people just want to feel good, and there's an overcompensation in like punishing your audience with certain movies or going Marvel. And I think for me, like I believe in the middle. I believe in this give and take. Like I'm going to use my trauma, my history, my knowledge, and the people around me that helped me get this movie made and their issues and their trauma, and put that into a conversation called a movie. And you just by nature, if the human emotions are real, you will relate to your audience. The only things you need to give are just the central things that can cause a problem for your story or cause a divide.
Yeah, I think thinking more in terms of, instead of thinking about how it's going to be perceived, just thinking about how you can authentically tell the stories that you want to tell. And I think that I speak highly towards that idea of commercialization, because to be able to show a mass audience of people as opposed to a really, really small niche audience of people, I think that there's a lot of power in that. But I think that, people, especially when they get into wanting to create films or any art form, really, they look at the people that are quote unquote like auteurs, right? They look at like a Tarkovsky or a Kubrick or a, but I think you can also be an auteur in a different way, right? By being able to translate a message to a wider audience too. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just about this idea of, it's really, I think what it really comes down to, like to go deeper into it, it's about accepting ourselves and being able to accept ourselves fully, and to be able to trust ourselves fully, to be able to speak authentically.
Yeah, I think everyone's got a magic, and I think most people's instinct to share and be an artist or communicate or get something out there, I don't think it's invalid. I think not everybody that fails in Hollywood is a failure at whatever they originally instinctually wanted to do. I think it's really more like there is a pivot that's needed, and some people never make it because it hurts so much or they've been hurt, and that happens. Yeah. That happens with me sometimes. But my pivot is less about what I want to do and more about my outlook on that thing that I do. And so I think, for me, it is acceptance. It is like, what do I feel like, I don't want to say I'm designed for, what do I feel like is my magic, is the thing, not that everybody says, but what I believe. And what I believe is there is an unwritten emotional intelligence that I don't know where I got. I don't know. I do not have parents that talk about anything that I talk about. I don't have a brother that does, it just, and I don't have a role model. I didn't grow up with types of people. So it's really just from probably digesting content so much and having to understand the human condition through inanimate objects and items and storytelling. That's a one-way direction that this is the creation that it's made. And so I think that that's kind of what like I need to do. So whatever I do, like I'm attached to some films that I would have never attached to even just a year ago, because I'm just like, I know how to make this mine and I know what to do with it, but it's also something that connects me to the world. And I think that's a fun journey, to use a project to connect you to people more. which, rather than just being like, this is what I want to say. Bye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I mean, over the course of the past couple of years, I mean, it could be you can tell me, but from my observation, it could be heavily induced from your ayahuasca experience that you had years ago now. That opened you up to this higher level of consciousness. But I've seen you being able to transform. I mean, it's not like we talk every single day, right? But I see spurts of you changing throughout the course of however long I've known you. It's been, 2016 is when we met each other, right? So 6 years.
Yeah.
And so I see you, like, I still see your fingerprint on your projects, but I also see you becoming more accepting of yourself and giving yourself more latitude for grace in moments of potential anxiety and just being able to move through things more maturely, at least from when I talk to you. Like I said, I'm not around you 24/7, but I see those moments of transformation and acceptance.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I do, I remember after ayahuasca, I went back and I watched some of my older content, and it's funny how it's not like I changed really in the sense of like I'm a different person. I just was able to go back and watch these things and use them almost as emotional capsules of what I was feeling, but also like truths that I didn't realize. Like I didn't realize I was technophobic until after ayahuasca. And then when I watched like Basement Jaxx and then I watched the Vitalic video, I'm like, oh, like there is technophobia in here. Because I'm so technological, I just assume people who are technophobic don't know anything about it. But actually the more you know about it, it's like also you have more reasons to sometimes be scared. So but it was one of those crazy weird things where I just was like, a lot of times my art was the truest form, even though it was the most doctored or the most like, manipulated. It was still like the core of what they were always was just this raw truth that I find really awesome, because it just tells me that that's always going to be the case. Even if something is not received well, or something like hit TV is like bad guy Saman, I always call it, because it's like jaded, angry Saman, but it doesn't mean the art in jaded, angry Saman time is not valid, because I would talk shit about that. I hated hit TV for so long because it just didn't come out the way I wanted it to come out. But it did, because when I made it, that's what it was. But then I grew on the course of making it. By the end, I was like, I wanted it to go away because I was like on to the next phase of my life.
Yeah. Do you mind if I make a comment about that?
Sure.
I think it's also because just psychologically being a director, your job is to direct, right? So you have to say things directly, right? Just it's in the title.
Yeah.
And you need to have or a lot of directors probably feel the need to have a lot of control over what they're trying to produce, right? And I always find it interesting when I hear of, whether you like Martin Scorsese or not is another thing, but I remember there was a conversation that I heard of Jonah Hill was trying to get feedback on his acting from Martin Scorsese, and Martin Scorsese knew that he was trying to get feedback from him about his acting. And then so during lunch, he would sit down and pull out a newspaper and just start reading it. So he basically just like blocked him from having any sort of communication about the project. And then so over the course of the filming, Jonah Hill came to the realization, oh, he's just trying to not micromanage me. He hired me and he trusted that I can do my job, Yeah. And so like, I think like,
which is funny because there's no proof that's actually even true, but it's whatever Jonah Hill needs to say to keep going. Like that's kind of what it is. Yeah. It's almost a reverse mirror. He put up a mirror. Look at yourself. Don't look at me. Don't look for me, to me for anything.
Yeah.
And then Jonah had to figure it out.
But that's the powerful element in this whole thing, right? Is that I think a lot of us. And it could be conditioning from society, but want to be told what to do. And in fact, it's easier in a sense to be told what to do through like BuzzFeed articles and fucking things on Instagram and, like 10-step sort of like programs to be able to, get ripped or whatever it could be, right? Instead of actually intuitively be able to sit down inside yourself and feel, oh, actually, this is what This is what I want to do. This is what I'm meant to do. Right. The societal pressure is exponentially expounded upon us because of social media and those sort of things.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I do think, here's a quote that I heard from somewhere. I don't know who, but I remember saying this to another director and he like scoffed at me. I said, the biggest strength of a director, is to know when to not control, when to give up control. Like it's as much about controlling as it is about not controlling. And I think that's the Werner Herzog thing, right? Werner Herzog is in the way opposite camp of very little control. And then you have David Fincher, who like is going to get fucking cancer from trying to control too many things, you know? And it's like, you know, where is that middle ground? Where is that, you know, self-empowerment and also humility that you are just this, you know, this consciousness in a meat bag, part of a giant system. That's the whole system is what's beautiful, not just you. And I think like that is tough. And when you get into like businesses like commercials, you realize quickly that the biggest difference within commercials and films is commercials, they're basically like trickery excuses to make good content, when the goal is not to make good content. The goal from the very beginning is to sell whatever product, right? In a movie, they want to sell tickets, but there is still this thing to create a story. It's just everybody's opinion about the story is different. So, but all of them are this form of control. We just feel safer in life to control. And as a director, our muscles to control and to see negativity and problems is really heightened. And something that I'm learning is the more I can see good, the more I can see the positive. It's not that the negatives go away. It's that the negatives actually become smaller. And then I have a holistic view of how big that negativity actually is. How big of a deal is this thing?
That's,
you know?
Yeah. No, that's
I gave a metaphor to Nicole the other day, who she's now just telling everybody. But I started these new meds about a month ago, and just trying them out. And like something that seems to have happened since I've taken them a little bit is, I didn't realize this, but the metaphor I'm using is a Zoom metaphor. But it's basically like, imagine you have gallery view, right? And then one of the boxes is negativity or skepticism, this like very noisy, dark, for me, it's very purple too, like a not friendly purple. And it's just, and imagine that just literally hijacking and pinning to your screen. But you have no ability, because it's so full screen, you have no ability. It's removed the ability to understand that you have gallery view. It's removed the ability to understand you have a mouse that you can click and minimize it back. Not minimize, but bring it back to gallery view. Because the last thing you want to do is hide that voice. That's like hiding grief. It's going to come back and it's going to kill you. Cancer, your own fucked up shit. It's going to cause you to do dumb stuff, whatever. So the weight of negativity doesn't always work. I still have fucking blowouts here and there. But like it, for the most part, it's just all of that same negativity, that chatter, that fucked up stuff. It's just this big now, you know? And if it gets this big, I go minimize, bro. Shoo, you know? Or go back to gallery view, you know? So that's, but that's kind of what I was getting at with just a sort of like, you kind of need to see the things that as a director you're supposed to not do. And a lot of people are just trying to not do like what is a bad director or whatever. And it's just, no, you just do you, dude. If you're fucking J.J. Abrams and you're not a visual artist and you're kind of a producer that can just direct solid movies, he knows that. You know, he's got no problems. He knows what he is. He's not Matt Reeves trying to make Batman. You know, Matt Reeves is JJ, just trying to not be JJ. He wants to be Fincher. And I'm just like, no, bro, I'm sorry. I'm just so sorry. You can't do it. But it's like you're trying to do something you shouldn't be doing. Planet of the Apes, that's what you should be doing, you know? But who am I to tell him? Like maybe he's in an opus mode, you know? But to me, Hollywood has this ability to completely like arrest you in this psychosis of delusions, and people who are so good at just barreling through will live an entire existence of falseness because they are able to drive through. And some of us should be grateful that we fall, because only when you fall you can go, oh shit, I don't even want to be that. You know what I mean?
No, it's true. It's true. And I think these are really good subjects to touch upon. I mean, I even touch upon, to expand upon, to be able to have that clarity in the failure, not saying that you shouldn't have a grieving period, if you wanted to get a film made or you were having an art gallery show that got canceled or, whatever it could be, right? Something that you're striving for and it doesn't work out exactly the way that you want it to work out. But there's many points in history where, for instance, I was watching this masterclass. I've been watching a ton about writers, and there's this one by Joyce Carol Oates, and she talks about a lot of these writers, these countless amount of writers that, they wanted their first book published, but in hindsight, it didn't get published. And in hindsight, they actually were so thankful it didn't get published because it gave them more time to learn and time to grow as a writer. And they actually scrapped those books. I think she gave an example of like James Joyce, the first novel that he wanted to put out didn't get published. And so like, I don't know. I think, over time, hopefully we can get that sort of clarity and perspective to be able to understand that failure is actually a gift in a lot of ways. And like, I've thought of the gift of an existential crisis, which I've talked about on the podcast before, because like if you listen to it and you don't compartmentalize that existential crisis, you can actually learn something very deep inside of yourself. That's why I write down a lot of my dreams now. Mm-hmm. And I try to sift through that, and it actually gives me good writing material too.
Yeah.
To understand like, why did I have that dream of that shadowy figure from afar that stepped into the tsunami?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've been doing some dream analysis stuff too. Not as in depth. I could be doing a better job probably, but my latest therapist, who I really like, she kind of gave me a new perspective on dreams and kind of focusing on the idea that your dreams, of course, we all know our dreams are just pretty much mostly us. They're just projections of us in different people or what we think someone is, but just actually going through your dream, knowing that everything in your dream is you. So if someone harms you, attacks you, cheats you, that person is not them. That person is you. So how are you hurting you? How are you cheating you? How are you? And it's like, it sounds kind of crazy because sometimes it doesn't really line up. But if you do actually hang out in that, it's like, it makes the most sense, and that's why most of my dreams that are the clearest are when there's inanimate objects or things where there's not another person. Like if I'm driving a car and I can't push the brakes, like there's no person to say that's what it is. It's like clearly loss of control. But when I have a friend that represents something to me, and I've had these dreams where he keeps getting killed, but like in different ways.
Is it me? Is it me?
No, it's not you.
Killed?
No, it's not you. It's a friend that's just really jolly, and he's a cinematographer, and like but what was funny is I kept saying him, and then my therapist just posed this question, and then it made sense. It became suddenly like a narrative that my brain kept trying to tell me, and this person represented a looseness, a flow, a childlike fun, and a very like just get it done. It needs to be done kind of attitude. And I was pushing that away. I was policing it. I had even one dream where a cop, and she was saying when you have a cops in your dreams, they tend to be your control, not your fear of cops. It's your control. And you're just choosing cops to be that. And I was like, and it makes sense. It tracks every time I've had a dream with a cop, which not many. They're all like, oh, that's like Saman controlling this other thing that represents this other thing, So that's been very helpful, and it's helped with like grief on dreams,
Yeah.
It's helped with dreams that I have about people who are very close to me, but also people who I don't even know, or dreams where I've had for my whole life, but now I have a slightly new tool to try to like examine it and see if there's extra information. But I'm going into dreams just because you brought it up. But basically, the idea of not compartmentalizing, like treating whatever those existential moments are as not real. but also not the whole house. It's just one of the rooms. You have a choice to leave the room and go to another room. And if the room happens to shift, just know not all of your house is going to be that one thing, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's the zoom window. It's just, you can compartmentalize it in a way, but it doesn't mean you can ignore it. It's just going to be here, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if it spills, it's fine, but you know you have the ability to bring it here. Listen, like I always say, like, listen to it like it's all of the people in the gallery are trying to give you opinions,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them is your negativity. You know, it's not useless. It's not throw it away, kill it. It's a demon. It's just like give it the power that it needs, which is just a voice that you can listen to.
Can I here, I'm going to pull up really quick this Taoist quote from the Tao Te Ching. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. No, actually, I thought I had it on hand.
You're all, no, I don't like it. I'm not reading that.
No. I thought I had it on hand, but I don't. But essentially, I'll paraphrase. So in the Tao, it says that the master knows that the shadow he casts is his own shadow.
Say it again.
I'm paraphrasing, but the master knows that the shadow he casts is his own shadow.
I'm going to look it up.
Okay, so yeah, you look it up. But anyways,
it says the shadow in the what? Yeah, there's just amazing. There's too many. Can't find it. Giving up.
There's a lot. No,
but I like it. I like it's sort of like an extra busy way to say something very simple, but I love it because it's a metaphor for the loop. It's a metaphor for like the sort of complexity of just like cause effect, the external things that you're afraid of when they come from internal, but the external things kind of made or started something internal, and then it becomes this loop, you know, and you start manifesting. It's like it's like when you have, if someone else were on this call right now and they turned on their microphone, we'd get this feedback loop, and until you stop it, it just keeps going and getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, you know?
Yeah, I love, man, that's a good metaphor too.
Yeah.
But I think like just parlaying off of what you were saying, I think it's really good to understand that we have responsibility.
Mm-hmm. You're going to take a picture of us right now?
Of course. We have responsibility of our own actions, you know, and we have the power to change, and we have more agency than we think. We're not victim to the way that we feel about things. We're not victim to the way that we throw tantrums about things. You know, we have control of those emotions. And I think like it gives a lot of power back to the individual to understand that, you know, that you're not a victim of your own doing. And sometimes you can be a victim of your own doing by not recognizing that you are actually responsible of your own actions.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting thing. I always have this theory that like you can't control emotions, but what you can control is like your relationship with them. I do think it's natural to have the ebbs and flow of weather, right? And it's just weather in the brain. But I do think there is this gray boundary that the emotion that you feel here is really just this, and then you add all these layers, and that equals depression, you know? So to a point, a lot of this is unnecessary, but maybe there's just this layer of like, you know, with these meds that I've been taking, I've been able to see my abilities when I'm sad, to realize that I feel sadness, but now I can actually say I'm not sad. It's very rare for me lately to 100% be like, do you actually believe you are sad right now? And it's like, no, I have sadness right now. I have a window of sadness, and the window happens to be either large or loud, or their microphone is louder that day or at that time. And that's crazy because it allows me now to like function even under. And I think a lot of problems that depression causes is your lack of function. It's harming you from doing things. So what I found is the ability to be sad still and channel sadness, but like still be functional. That's like night and day. Like if that's the best I got, I'll take it, because the worst is when you're sad and you're not functional, or you lose all drive. And I think the one area that I still suffer from is filmmaking. Is if I feel I'm ingesting something that is triggering me, it's very easy. Like even Instagram post or seeing a friend make a movie or something like that. Like if it's very easy for me to go back into that world, but it's hard for me to stay in it now, which is a good sign. And my therapist is telling me to, like, whenever you get into trigger, instead of like avoiding it or running away, or instead of hating it, like see if it's a big window that just needs to be minimized into gallery view. It's like anytime you're jealous, really it's just whoa, there's all these other things which are inspiration, proud, excited, confident. It's all these other things. This one is just easy. One's just more popular for some reason for me, and it just goes whoop.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. I think that's a really good point to bring up. To like maybe those feelings will always be there, and it's not necessarily about compartmentalizing the specific feeling, but it's understanding that. So I'll relate this to this psychology book that I read, called Fierce Intimacy. It's by this author. His name's Terry Real, and he's a practicing clinical psychologist. And he talks in the book about the adaptive child and not allowing the adaptive child to take over your life. And so there's this rubric to where in the center is a healthy adult, and the adaptive child is the top part is being grandiose, and the bottom part is being it's like this whole rubric. I can't think of the whole thing right now. But anyways, the point is not allowing the adaptive child to overrun your whole entire consciousness, and being able to be more centered in the middle where you're a healthy adult.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, that's you could tell that's definitely a great rubric for people who suffer from trauma, because what's interesting about trauma is it's this irony where people who have trauma sometimes block things out, yet they're constantly driven back to the trauma, and some people are actually more aware of the trauma and they just have constant anxiety, but then they build other trauma, like compound trauma. But it's like it's like getting over some of the stuff that you're sensitive to, or even real crazy traumatic incidences. For me, it's like immigration trauma, learning disability trauma from having ADD, and just being real. I was a crazy intense troublemaker, so there's just lots of bad Saman trauma that I have. So I constantly can feel sort of the grip of being kind of taken over by something like that. But yes, the adaptive child is a great example, because it's all about the grounding force, and that's what makes you an adult, is the ability to be this kid whenever you want or whenever you feel. But always when you're this kid, should you be in control or not of that, you have control of this, of seeing this part, and you see that. You see adults that full on look like there's no way this person has control of their life, but they do. Not because they can turn it on and off. That's a machine. We're not machines. What I mean by that is they have great relationships with these two components. This component has a great relationship with this component, and this component has a great relationship with this component. And for me, it's a little one way. The adult part of me has a great relationship with the child self, but when my child self gets really scared or triggered, it does not have good relationships with anybody.
I can totally relate with that, man. Yeah. I mean, I used to get triggered a lot by people that were bullies.
I witnessed it. Remember when we saw that homeless guy get a little too close to us? I witnessed it.
Wait, what happened?
You remember when that guy really close and he was like, come on, he was like pushing us for some money, and you just were like, you just back up, dude, Yeah.
Well, I mean, that is just pure safety, But,
I'm sure there was, but there was definitely a moment where it was like something and something necessary. You were building boundaries and telling him, hey, dude, you're crossing our space. But there was definitely something else. It was, you got here way too fast, But it was amazing, though, because to me, it was just also it showed insane restraint. You knew exactly where your wall was. You know what I mean? You knew you thought 5 steps ahead of 2. I'm doing this now, but it was crazy how fast you got to think about those 5 steps. You know what I mean? And I was like, whoa, man. Like, I would have never done that. I like kicked the guy's jaw one time because he like was about to mug me, even though there's probably some other way to handle it. I just fucking knocked him out with my fucking magical leg muscle. You know? You know, but like if I was you, I'm sure you would like I just know you would have found a way to like, you know, either physically do something that doesn't harm him or like just omit something that makes them go, all right, you're not worth it. But I just was like reflex, like hit him in the jaw, knocked him out.
Yeah,
you know?
I think there's a certain amount of you can always disarm a situation. I was listening to this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, highly regarded black belt. His name is Ryan Hall, and he was saying that you know, the best self-defense technique is just talking.
No, but I think that the what you were going to say earlier too, though, is valid. It's just treating it. It's the whole idea in like martial arts. You know, this whole idea of an enemy is false. You have an opponent, and an opponent you respect. You know what I mean? And an opponent, there's nothing that your opponent can't be your friend. There's nothing about that. There's no rule. And unless you're talking about like Lock Muay Thai or some shit, like there's nothing about martial arts that's about destroy enemy. You know what I mean? Like you win, but it's like this relationship, this sort of anger, this rage. The more we do that to others, the more we do it to ourselves. And like for me, I think like jealousy is a byproduct of like an over abundance of like inspiration. It's actually inspiration, but like completely stripped of some of the positivity, and you're just focused on this thing of they did this, and then you hate yourself so much to say I can't do that, and then that's jealousy. You know what I mean? And that's people trying to like bring people down. And it happens a lot, dude. There are people who hire me in the ad world who just kind of want to be me. And I'm like, bro, you don't really want to be me. You're making up a belief of who you think I am and we do those things with Instagram and shit. And then now you're trying to like punish the job or punish me or hold me back or cut me out of a process because you feel uncomfortable when I'm around, and it's giving you this temporary feel good feeling that, you know, no, you're in charge. No, you're the creative person. And at the end of the day, we know that's false, you know, and it's just like, it's like the equivalent of just taking a drug. So to me, I think like the sort of the respect for yourself, I think comes in the form, and, you know, coming back to the very first thing I was saying is just knowing what you do, like what you like. And I'll leave you with something that Nicole said, my partner. She said something really simple that I did not have an equivalent answer, but I asked the question, what drives you in life? And she, you know, she's not that kind of person. Like she doesn't talk the same way I talk. Like I'm much more blah, you know, but she's very smart, and she's psychologically and emotionally intelligent and very similar, different, but the same amount ways. And she said, I guess it would be feel as many different human emotions, feel as many emotions as I can, and meet as many different types of people as I can. And it was insane because I'm like, she's a line producer. There was nothing very specifically tied to her career, but her career provides those things. You feel a lot of emotions in a creative environment with tons of people and high pressure. And she also loves getting drinks with people and meeting people. She's like the opposite of me, where I'm like antisocial and stuff, have Prince complex. She's all about just making friends and being friends with people. And like, I was like, I don't have that answer. Like, I always thought my answer was to communicate myself and in an artful way. But I think I have to ask that question of myself. I don't have that answer. Like, if I were to take filmmaking and all the other things I like, what's the thing that they have in common? That base human thing that you can control. You can feel as many emotions. You can just go and meet a bunch of people. Those are all things you can control. It was fascinating. You know, I think she was kind of weirded out by how like exciting I thought her answer was and how it put me to shame. But like, I was like, I definitely still think about it. And I'm like, no, I don't have the answer, but I'm excited too, because I'm close to it, I think, you know?
I think you are too. Yeah. And I think you have a very innate ability to be honest. You know, I think that's partially...
That's a very Persian thing, by the way. If you watch Iranian cinema, we're too honest. That's our problem. You know,
You're very, yeah. You're too Persian. That's it. No, I was
too
kidding.
Persian. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
just we're just too honest. You know, we just make the movie and it's about suffering and deal with it. Watch it. You know.
Yeah. No.
So I'm fighting that inner Iranian poet. Sorry, continue.
Yeah.
I got to bounce actually in a few minutes, but
Oh, okay.
I want
yeah.
you to finish what you're saying.
No. I was gonna say that. Yeah, your abilities to be honest with yourself are extremely inspiring. You know, and I think that the jealousy that you speak of has to do with that as well. But you're allowing yourself to control that adaptive child side where you would allow the jealousy to overrun your consciousness, right?
Yeah, and I think I would say, just to put myself into check, is the meds seem to have helped bring down the weight, because I don't think meds are supportive. That's really all they are. You still got to fucking do the work. You can't just juice up. You know what I mean? You still got to just do the work. And so part of it just allows me to build the relationship. The relationship's still not quite there. So I think the adaptive child and that central grounding, there's the central adult is not, or I would say my higher self, they still have, like, not turbulence. They don't fully always sink, but when they don't sink, the whole ship doesn't crumble. It's just like a finger doesn't work, or a couple fingers don't work, or maybe even a hand, but I still got another hand. Where before it was like I was useless. And I think that that part of the journey of those two will answer my journey, or be a part of my answer when I kind of am able to, like, dissect what it is I seek.
Yeah.
You know, because at times I think it's energetic healing. Sometimes I believe it's just talking. But I'm like, I guess I could, that's an answer. I could just talk to a bunch of people, but I realized I can talk through my work. I can talk through my voice. I can talk through the podcast. So talking has been kind of the closest answer, but I don't think that's actually quite there yet. I think there's something a little bit more specific that's very simple, actually. And it could be something human emotion based, like some form of, like, shamanistic-y, psych vibe somewhere there, not therapy, like just something about psychological, like exploration, you know, like if I can just constantly explore psychological something, I don't know, but it's a fun exercise, you know, and I'll probably just write down a bunch of them and see which ones stick, you know, but yeah, man,
it's all an exercise to be continued.
Totally. Well, thank you for having me, and you know, I promise, and I want to be more involved in interviews this year, and I'm hoping that we can kind of stay in touch, and, you know, certain interviews, you know, I can jump in and be the sidekick that, you know, I think I've looked back, was listening last month to, like, a bunch of artist Decoded stuff that I missed, and I was just like, man, I'm just feel so bummed that I miss out on being able to attend, and I'm excited to sort of, you know, rise to the occasion and be there and explore.
We should let's I know you got to jump, but yeah, let's definitely let's have a meeting about that, like whenever you're free. Yeah,
I would love to,
sometime this week. Yeah,
I love that, good, man. Dude. Well, love you.
Love you too, man.
Be well. Don't revert to adaptive child. And yeah.
All right. Thanks,
all right.
Man.
Love you, dude. Bye.
Music for the podcast is by Rarebit, aka Justin Dosher Hopkins. YouTube and creative support is by Tyler Scully. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time.